G'day everyone, Half Kaldorei Bard here, coming at you in a very provocative manner. Oh God! I'm 11! With yet another Midnight Alpha video. On today's menu, we're looking at neighbourhoods, particularly an in-depth look at Founders Point, the Alliance's neighbourhood. Pour yourself a cup of coffee, or if you're in severe need of help, I strongly recommend you to drink excessive amounts of alcohol. It drowns out the demons in your head. This is Founders Point. Dropping into Founders Point, you will immediately find yourself immersed in a modern iteration of Elwyn Forest. I know for a fact that the moment I dropped in, it brought back memories of the time when I was mercilessly hunted down by an entire village of Murlocs and sodomized for even daring to step into their lane. After going to therapy to deal with my resurfacing trauma, I logged on to Xal and began to explore the neighbourhood. Once again, I found myself battling with the Lure error screen because removing the Narcissist add-on from my alpha files requires advanced thinking that my chimpanzee brain is incapable of figuring out. After battling the Lure error screen, I began my journey. I realized it was too dark. I went to my toys section to try and look for the jar of sand that makes the skybox appear as if it were daytime, only to realize again that this is alpha, and that the US RAN servers are 20 hours behind the more superior hemisphere. So fuck me while I smash my setup for filming in the dark, I guess. After beating my head against my keyboard until I bled, I bit my tongue and spent an hour filming wild footage shots of Founders Point at day. Only then I got Xal to finally make a move so that I can show off some of the places of the neighbourhood. There were a lot of vendors that sold nothing because, again, it is alpha, and a whole lot of the neighbourhood features haven't been implemented yet. So I fucked off from town and ran to the town stage to find out that the curtains have physics. Which may not seem impressive, but for a 20-year-old game running on ketamine, this is like witnessing sorcery for my single-digit IQ. I thought owning a vineyard would be a good idea, but my doctor says that if I continue drinking any more wine, my liver is going to end up exploding, and that is why I don't see him anymore. And so I took a stroll up a mountain to try and find a secluded plot of land away from the hustle and bustle. As it turns out, I'm very antisocial and hate people, so I went on a bit of mountain trekking. But it turns out I'm a fucking idiot who doesn't seem to believe in gravity, and fell off a waterfall to my death. I resurrected and then took a stroll to the beach, and figured there would be some good land along the coast, which there was. But that would mean families and their kids would be arriving on the weekends for a day at the beach, and I can only look at children for so long before I start becoming a pro-gun lobbyist. I figured it was best to move on. I carried on my journey into the farmlands and thought to myself this would be a good place to build a farm and raise a family, until I came to my fucking senses and remembered that I would hate to live on a fucking farm. I can barely manage my own garden, let alone 300 acres of land, and I'm not nearly wealthy enough to house my own servants. So I left my Mexican drug lord fantasies behind and crossed the bridge into Duskwood-like lands. Now this was my style of land. The plots were secluded, and I was surrounded by dark, creepy forests with some night elf elements to it. There was even a graveyard nearby, so if ever I was running a little low on cash, I could always bring my shovel down and do some treasure hunting. I ended up purchasing a plot of land just across the river from the Elwyn side, so that when kids look upon my shit shack, they can see me through the windows screaming at the wall as I spiral into an ever-descending pit of madness. Now it is time to construct the perfect home. One that would stand out from all the rest in a way that shouts, I don't want to be looked at, but at the same time, my deep insecurity compels me to crave the attention from others my parents never gave me. And so I dicked around with a few of the decor outside and realized I can cover my house with a tent, so I did. Now I had a house for my house. One that I could not admire correctly because once again, living in the superior hemisphere, everything is dark. And, being the genius that I am, chose to live in the darkest part of the neighbourhood, of which I now have regrets. But I bit the bullet and proceeded to buy some extra furniture, as I wanted to see just how far the player housing feature in its first iteration was willing to cope with. As you can see, I was purchasing a lot of trees, and a lot of windows. You'll see as to why shortly. I began to fly around to get some inspiration from other houses, only to be kicked out of properties for trespassing. So I stopped imitating my own unhealthy habits in real life and What? Oh, you stupid cunt! He left the controls on for his house. Yes, you dumb cunt. Oh, you should not have done. What the? As per usual, my camera cut out before I even noticed it, so I could not film the process of me turning my neighbour's property into a recreation of the burning of Teldrassil, and eventually all of my hard work being deleted because it turns out Blizzard had figured out psychopaths like myself would be salivating at the thought entering people's houses at night to wreck up the place. So, fun police doing its job, as they say. I began the slow process of obliterating the local neighbourhood's market value as I expanded everything to a scale of 200%, which unfortunately does not work my dick unless I slam it really hard between a door. Against my doctor's recommendations, of course, but I retorted that he ought to shut his trap or I would recommend him to a trip to the morgue, of which now I have a violence restraining order issued against me as a result. In fact, with the amount of trees I have lodged into this abomination of a house, I would not be surprised if I've received various violence restraining orders issued against me by my neighbours. But joke's on them, I went to their properties and killed their livestock. I figured it was only a matter of time before the boys in blue locked down my location and would force me to leave the neighbourhood, so I exhausted every last resource, particularly various trees and windows, until my abomination was at last complete. Behold, I call my masterpiece the Existential Despair. My take on the current Alliance neighbourhood is that it evokes a sense of nostalgia, with a ton of nooks and crannies and spaces that encourages social interactions. It is very much like returning home to Elwyn, Westfall and Duskwood. As someone who started my WoW journey in Elwyn originally, I do honestly feel at home in this place. It's like starting again for the very first time. But instead of going on an adventure, I'm getting into civil lawsuits with my neighbours and causing domestics. But alas, what do you think? Shall I cover the Horde side next? Actually, I already have alpha videos in the works, so you get what you're given. Alright, go home. Catch you later, guys.